$53 million revealed. My son's incredible betrayal turned into a touching plea for help days later. David's heart raced as he stared at his phone, the headline flashing in front of him like an accusation. 53 million revealed. He clenched his oil-stained hands, a visible reminder of the years spent in his struggling auto repair shop. To think that just a week ago, he was beaming with pride as Jake packed his bags for that elite university, dreams bigger than their modest life. Expectations whispered sweet nothings in David's ear, but now, they morphed into dark shadows of dread. How could Jake, who had always understood the worth of hard work and loyalty, plunge into a world so foreign that it twisted the very principles he'd instilled? Every moment of the past few years replayed in David's mind like an endless loop. Teaching Jake the tools of the trade, fixing engines together, laughter echoing in the shop. How had it come to this? He felt the walls of the shop closing in, each oil-stained corner a witness to their bond. But now, those memories felt like curses, taunting him with reminders of a son who had stepped into a place filled with deceit. The tension electrified the air as he wondered if everything he had worked for had been swept away in a vortex of ambition and betrayal. Was he losing the son he had strived to raise with integrity, only to watch him tangle himself in a web of greed? Panic gripped him tighter than the wrench he used daily, fingertips twitching nervously. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. A knock on the door jolted David from his turmoil. It swung open to reveal a slick corporate lawyer, his face a mask of professionalism concealing ulterior motives. The instant chill seeped into David's bones as he caught sight of the briefcase in the man's hand. Instinctively, his shoulders stiffened, preparing for the onslaught of truths that felt far too heavy to bear. A hidden family fortune. The whispers danced around town, making him feel like a ghost in his own life. The mere mention of wealth had drawn eyes, hungry and judgmental, all aimed at the man who had struggled with every dollar. David's mind spiraled. What if they wondered if he had intentionally kept his son in the shadows of a legacy? What if they saw Jake as nothing more than a pawn in a game far beyond their humble upbringing? Each breath felt shallow, haunted by the thought of judgment. The lawyer's mere presence made betrayal loom larger than life. Every word he spoke a nail driving deeper into David's psyche. His entire life, summed up in those tangled emotions of love and disappointment, felt ready to shatter. Could he really confront Jake now? The circumstances were unraveling, the stakes impossibly high. As he stood at a crossroads, David's heart clenched painfully. In that pivotal moment, everything was on the precipice. When Jake first called with that desperate plea for help, raw vulnerability bleeding through his voice, David felt the last threads of hope fall quietly away. Would he have the courage to embrace the shattered bond, or would the weight of betrayal seal his decision? Uncertainty clawed at him as the door shut behind the lawyer, leaving David suspended in a storm of emotions that threatened to drown him. The clock was ticking, and choices lay heavy in the air like a second skin, begging for resolution that may never come. David took a deep breath, forcing himself to step back from the chaos swirling in his mind. The sensation of panic began to ebb as he focused his attention on the present. He grabbed a wrench, his hands deftly working on a rusted engine block, the familiar motions grounding him. There was comfort in the routine, in the physicality of labor, yet it deepened his turmoil. As he turned bolts and tightened screws, each click echoed a tightening knot in his chest. Alone against unfulfilled dreams and diminishing trust. Confronting the uncertainty ahead felt as daunting as stepping into the unknown fog of a winter morning. He had always preached to Jake about the importance of facing one's fears. Yet here he was, paralyzed by his own. Why was it easier to fix an engine than to confront his son? The wrench slipped from his grasp and clattered on the cement floor, the sound resonating like a bell summoning him to action. He couldn't ignore the gnawing need to reconnect with Jake, to understand the boy he once knew. David needed clarity, a path through this emotional maze. He thought back to the conversations they had shared over the years, what it truly meant to build something from nothing, and how integrity was the backbone of any accomplishment. But now, those lessons felt like fragile whispers, easily overshadowed by betrayal. He considered the possibility that Jake's choices were driven not by greed, but by pressure. A twist of fate, dragging him into a battle far larger than either could comprehend. Deciding to break the silence, David reached for his phone, fingers hovering nervously over Jake's name. The weight of unspoken words hung heavy, yet a spark of determination ignited within him. He needed to know the truth, not just about that fortune, but about what had driven his son into such a morally complex quagmire. The chime of the call echoed through the shop, each ring amplifying his anxiety, mixing with hope. David had never shied away from difficult conversations in the past. Yet now, the thought of hearing Jake's voice held the potential to shatter everything. What if they simmered down to recriminations rather than resolutions? Would Jake even pick up? After what had unfolded, would he be met with silence instead of a welcoming voice? Finally, the call connected, and Jake's voice crackled through the speaker, laced with tension. "Dad?" That single word flooded David with emotion, a mixture of relief, confusion, and fear. This was more than just a son reaching out. It was an opening, an invitation to confront the reality that had turned their lives upside down. "Jake, we need to talk," he replied, trying to keep his tone steady. "I know. I'm sorry." David could sense the weight of regret in Jake's words, a camaraderie in their shared guilt. The connection that had once felt invincible now hung by a thread, yet David realized that each moment allowed room for both confrontation and healing. As they engaged in tentative dialogue, David's heart raced in sync with the realization. A decision had to be made. Would he step into the shadows of betrayal, or could they together navigate toward the light of understanding? Meanwhile, deep inside, another thought ignited an unsettling truth. What if Jake's actions were not just about ambition, but also an echo of David's own choices, his years of toil, sacrifices made for a life steeped in density just to keep afloat? In that fraught conversation, the disturbing implications lingered. The truth loomed, threatening to unravel not just their relationship, but David's entire identity as a father. Maybe, somewhere along the line, he had overlooked something fundamental about both his son and himself. The moment pulled taut, waiting for them to acknowledge the emerging shadows entwined within their lives. As they ventured deeper into the conversation, David could hardly anticipate where it would lead. Yet the undercurrent of discovery stirred an urgency to confront the inevitable. Would the next words spoken grant them liberation, or bind them further in darkness? The tension lay heavy in the air like a ticking clock, each heartbeat urging them toward a revelation, a turning point neither could afford to overlook. The conversation hung suspended, a delicate balance between hope and despair. David could feel the weight of Jake's confession challenging him to confront the past and his own decisions that had led them to this fractured moment. He drew a breath, steadying himself against the tide of conflicting emotions washing over him. "What did you mean when you said you were sorry?" The pause was heavy on the line, suggesting Jake was grappling with the enormity of his actions. "I got involved with some people, bad people. I thought I could handle it, but..." His voice cracked, revealing not just regret, but a vulnerability David hadn't expected. As he listened, David felt a tight knot of anger and helplessness form in his chest. How many times had he warned Jake about the company he kept? Yet here they were, ensnared in this crisis not by failure alone, but by a sinister entanglement David scarcely understood. "Why didn't you come to me?" he asked, frustration bubbling beneath his words. "I raised you better than this." "I thought I could make it work," Jake responded, a defensive edge creeping into his tone. "Every time I tried to talk to you, you were too busy with the shop, with your own problems." The words struck David like a blow. Did he unknowingly push Jake away while scrambling to hold their lives together? He felt the cold realization wrap around him. It was true. He had buried himself in work, convinced that breaking his back for the business would ensure their survival. But at what cost? "Jake, he started, but the weight of his thoughts tangled up, leaving him grasping for understanding. "You didn't have to fight your battles alone. You know I'm always here for you." Silence stretched between them, momentarily disarming the tension. This was not just about betrayal. It was a symptom of a deeper failings as a father. David began to see it. His fixation on success had mirrored a silent expectation that Jake would find his own way, unaware of how isolating that could be. I thought you'd be disappointed," Jake finally admitted, the vulnerability returning. "Like I was letting you down." A sense of recognition washed over David. He had constructed walls around them both, believing hard work and sacrifice would protect their future, only to discover those same walls had closed over his son, suffocating his ability to reach out. "Jake, listen to me," David said, his voice softening. "I'm not disappointed in you, but I am scared. I'm scared you won't see a way out of this, and that's what we need to figure out. What can we do? Together." Jake inhaled sharply, a rustle of uncertainty muffling his breaths. "I don't know, Dad. I might be too far in." There it was, the reckoning of consequences. David's heart sank at the implication. He understood that fear often disguised itself as hopelessness. He needed to guide Jake, but first, he had to confront his own. "Nothing is too far if we face it head-on. We have to dismantle the maze you are in. Can I trust you to be honest with me? We can brainstorm solutions, but it starts with the truth. What have you got involved in?" Another pause extended like an eternity, as if Jake were weighing each word on a scale of potential consequence. I owe money to those people, and they're not just gonna let it slide. I don't know how this happened. It spiraled out of control. Every word felt like a weight on David's chest. The stakes were higher than he'd imagined, and yet, within that fear, determination began to take shape. This was far beyond just a father-son scuffle over choices. This was a critical decision point for both of them. "Whatever it takes, we'll find a way. I don't want you to face this alone. But we need to make sure we have all the pieces first," David asserted, wondering how his repairs with the engine were a metaphor for their current situation. Both required time, care, and understanding. As tensions transformed into a plan forged in mutual vulnerability, a dawning realization hit David. By facing the truth alongside Jake, he reclaimed a sense of agency over the narrative that had tangled their lives in shadows. The ensuing resolve within him felt foreign but invigorating, a familiar mechanical rhythm in a profoundly personal context. What they both needed was an escape from the chaos, an action to navigate the intricate complexities entangled in their relationship. But as they conversed about potential solutions, David's mind retreated into darker corners. Could he really trust the outside world around Jake, given the depth of the situation? The lie of security suddenly felt suffocating. He had to ask himself, was it too late to reach for a new identity as a father and shield? In this pivotal moment, would they emerge stronger or stumble deeper into a pit of darkness framed by desperate decisions? The weight of uncharted territory loomed as David's fingers fidgeted with the wrench in his pocket. What awaited him on the other side of this revelation remained shrouded in uncertainty, pressing against the urgency to confront a storm they could not avoid. The conversation shifted the very ground beneath David's feet. Each moment felt charged with unspoken fears, But an unexpected clarity was taking shape amidst the chaos. He could see now that this was a unilateral turning point for both of them, an opportunity to reforge a bond frayed by neglect and miscommunication. Yet even as the initial shock of Jake's admission settled, anxiety crept in, whispering doubts about their next steps. "Let's face it," David began, pulling his mind away from the fear and into action. "We have to consider how you ended up in this mess." The gravity of the words landed between them. Dissecting the how felt necessary. It would serve as both a means to ameliorate Jake's immediate risks and a foundation for rebuilding trust. "I thought I could manage the payments. They promised good returns. I thought it was just a bit of gambling." Jake's voice trailed off, his tone frayed with regret and shame. David, feeling the swell of disappointment rise within him, squelched the instinct to chastise. Now was not the time for blame. Now was the time for understanding. "Gambling?" The edge in David's voice made Jake flinch. "You've always been better than that. Why did you think this was smart?" "Because I wanted to make something of myself, Dad." The words burst forth, raw and unfiltered. "I wanted to prove that I could succeed without you. To show you I'm not just your son, but someone capable of standing on my own." David's heart twisted. This wasn't just Jake's battle. It was woven with threads of David's own failings. In your quest to prove yourself, you lost sight of what really mattered. You're not alone in this. You never had to be. A silence enveloped them once more, but it was pregnant with possibility, rather than despair. David understood now that he needed to create a shift, not only in their current predicament, but within the very framework of their relationship. "If we're going to fix this, you need to let me in," he declared, his voice steady. "I can help you come up with a plan. If these people are as dangerous as you say, we need to approach this strategically." Jake hesitated, swallowing hard. "They aren't just going to disappear. What if they come looking for me?" The transformation in David's psyche began to set a new course. Fear, while present, wasn't the only driver that could shape their response. "Then we face them together. That's what we'll do." Although doubt continued to gnaw at him, the onset of resolve glimmered in its wake. "Together?" Jake echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, together. We reassemble your approach and tackle it head-on." David leaned back in his chair, a well-worn tool of conviction rising within him. "We begin investigating who they are. We'll gather evidence, anything that can safeguard you. We'll create a strategy that looks beyond the chaos." Jake's expression brightened slightly, the flicker of hope between them rekindling a long-dormant fire. However, David couldn't shake his own internal conflict. What if this plan backfired? What if they unwittingly placed themselves in greater danger? Those thoughts clawed at him as they constructed their path forward. "Jake, I know this is a lot," he continued, keeping his tone even. "But we need to draw upon our support systems, people we trust. You can't bear this weight alone." He paused, questioning whether forfeiting their privacy felt like a betrayal. "That might be wise," Jake hesitated, clearly grappling with the idea. "But who could we even talk to about this? Anyone with experience. I know some people from the shop who may have insights or connections," David replied, his willingness to act reframing his very essence. He didn't just want to be a problem solver. He yearned for them to be collaborators. "Are you sure they'll help us?" Jake asked, doubt creeping back into the corners of his mind. "I believe they will." David allowed certainty to push back against fear. "But whatever happens next, we commit to honest communication, to rebuilding. We can't hide from reality anymore." A nervous energy surged through him. They were standing at a threshold, fraught with uncertainty, but lined with potential for change. David took a deep breath, the wrench in his pocket suddenly feeling like a symbol of tools, not just for machines, but for mending fractured trust. They needed to be honest with each other to bridge this chasm. With each decision they faced, David felt both the weight of the past and the glimmer of a renewed partnership. But a lingering question still echoed in his mind. Could he truly navigate this storm without losing himself again? The hours stretched into what felt like lifetimes, filled with planning and strategizing. But as they uncovered darker realities about Jake's entanglements, doubt twisted in his stomach. It was clear this was just the beginning. What awaited them beyond that first contact with those who posed a threat was still weighed down by shadows. Would they hold firm against the gale? Or would insecurity unravel them at this pivotal moment? The flicker of the overhead light cast shadows across the room as David rummaged through old files, sparking reminders of past triumphs and failures. Each piece of paper felt like a portal to another time, a hint of stability he desperately needed to grasp amidst the uncertainty. But there was no escaping the reality of their situation. Jake's mistake was a glaring decay in the fabric of their connection. David had made it a life principle to prepare for every contingency, but nothing had prepared him for this. He exhaled heavily, feeling the contemplative haze weighing down on him. This wasn't merely about Jake anymore. It was a challenge demanding a reflection of his own choices. Did he reinforce independence at the cost of their bond? The flood of regret washed over him, but resolve tightened its grip. Clarity came from adversity, and if they were to rebuild, they had to establish new paradigms of trust. "Let's check your phone," David suggested, turning to face Jake, who was nervously tapping his feet. "We need to identify who we're dealing with." The trust he sought to nurture required transparency, but he saw the glimmer of fear in Jake's eyes, the fear of reconciling with brutal truths. "Are you sure? What if someone sees?" Jake stammered, retreating within his shell. David recognized the instinct to hide. It was easier than facing the evidence of his poor choices. Still, he pressed on. "This is our only chance to understand what we're up against. You're not alone in this, Jake. You have me." David felt the weight of his own conviction, as his voice echoed in the cramped space. Reluctantly, Jake produced his phone and handed it over. David scrolled through recent messages and contacts, tension tightening his chest with each discovery. They were laced with desperation and deceit, a cocktail of poor judgment. Panic surged, battling with an urge to act decisively. "Look here." David pointed at a series of aggressive texts outlining threats, demands for payment that insidiously wormed their way into Jake's life. Each word verified the complexity of Jake's situation, and by extension, revealed David's failure to notice signs of struggle. "What do we do now?" Jake's voice cracked, vulnerability spilling over. A flicker of courage rose within David, igniting a plan forged in urgency. "We confront this, head on. But we need to gather more intel. We might have to meet someone in person, a contact that can offer clarity." The thought of approaching anonymous figures haunted him. It could lead them deeper into danger. But retreating would only tighten the noose. David resolved to methodically prepare, reclaiming control from the deepening crisis. "We need to leverage what we have. An analysis of the texts, identifying the personas involved, maybe even their activities," he stated, his mind racing through possibilities. Each decision felt imbued with his need to create a solid foundation, not just for Jake, but for himself. "Can we really do this?" Jake trembled with doubt, but the yearning for validation shone through. "Yes, but we can't succeed alone. Let's reach out to Steve and Lisa. They have insight into the kind of people we might be up against." Acceptance flickered in Jake's expression, an unsteady bridge forming between them. The weight of their decisions pressed heavily upon David, forcing him to confront lingering fears about vulnerability. He was often the architect of solutions, yet seeking help felt uncomfortable, a step away from self-sufficiency he had mastered over the years. But in clarity, there was power. Leaning into the discomfort could lead to growth. Hours flew by as they pieced together a plan. It culminated in a series of texts to trusted contacts, Each notification buzzed like a drum, reverberating their intentions. They were operating in a space between trust and uncertainty, a delicate dance meant to restore balance. As they awaited replies, David's determination surged, but doubt lingered like a vengeful specter. Were they stepping into something deeper? What if the very acts meant to protect them brought forth repercussions they couldn't foresee? "Dad," Jake's tentative voice pierced through. "No matter what happens next, thank you for doing this with me. I was so afraid you'd walk away." In that moment, David saw not just a wounded son, but a blossoming partnership. The walls around their relationship trembled, but they could fortify them anew. They were in this together. Even on the edge of chaos, they could find fortitude. Just as the screen lit up with a message, David's heart raced. What awaited them was bigger than they had anticipated. Shaking off the urgent premonition, he prepared for whatever came next. Could this partnership survive the realities of facing their adversaries head-on? The answer hovered on the horizon, just out of reach, as they teetered closer to a revelation, and a confrontation unlike any they had imagined. David's heart raced as the message notification pulsed insistently from Jake's phone. Each beep felt like a countdown, edging them closer to an engagement they could hardly comprehend. He stole a glance at Jake, whose anxious gaze was glued to the screen. "Open it," David urged, trying to maintain a steady tone. The moment felt pivotal, a juncture between their old selves and a new reality that threatened to dismantle them both. With trembling fingers, Jake unlocked the phone. The message was from Steve, his old college friend, their link to the unpredictable underworld Jake had accidentally entered. "Meet me at the diner on 5th. We need to talk," the text said, layered with urgency that pulsed through the cramped space. "Do you want to meet him?" David asked, though he already knew the answer. They had no real choice. The threats loomed larger than world events could define. "Yeah, we need to," Jake replied, his voice barely above a whisper, the confidence he had begun to gather flickering uncertainly. David's own doubts started to crystallize in the breath between his words. "It's dangerous, Jake. We have no idea who he's connected with now." "I know," Jake answered, a veneer of resolve hardening around his fear. "But I can't keep hiding. I need us to confront this together." The burgeoning partnership was an unexpected roadblock in David's mind, a reminder of how much they had to gain, but also how much they had already risked. He felt a pang of guilt. Perhaps his defenses, built painstakingly over years, had shielded him too well. Perhaps he had kept Jake too insulated from the harsh realities of life. "We could prepare ourselves better. We can gather more information before we confront him," David suggested. He was grappling with the remnants of his protective instincts, wanting to maintain control, but realizing that it might already be too late for that. Jake's eyes narrowed. "Or we can wait until we're in even deeper. We can't keep running from this." David found himself at a crossroads, the internal conflict spiraling into clarity. Jake's voice was earnest, a plea for shared strength. Did he really trust this new form of vulnerability that was blossoming in their exchanges? "All right," David finally conceded, his determination solidifying into a palpable energy. "But we go in prepared. We need to understand who we are dealing with. It's not just Steve we have to think about. Once we step into that diner, it's game on." With a quick exchange of strategizing, they listed questions to ask, basic and probing inquiries to tease apart the truths from the lies. Jake's nervousness began to morph into resolve, strengthening their bond further. The tension sharpened as evening descended. David found the need for clarity rising within him. What would happen next could determine the fabric of their future, fostering either freedom or entrapment. The importance of this meeting transcended the immediate concerns. It was, instead, a test of their own newly formed alliance. "Are you ready for this?" David asked as they stepped out into the cool night air. "It's time to face the music," Jake replied, reflecting a bravery that stirred pride in David. though unease crashed like waves within him. Calmness descended as they walked together, an unspoken synchronization woven between them. The diner emerged, a bright beacon in the dusk, a stark contrast to the chaos that lay ahead. David's heart thudded, thumping against his chest like a war drum heralding confrontation and revelation. But just as they crossed the threshold, the shock of recognition pulled David's heartbeat to a crawl. A figure seated at the counter, as familiar as it was unsettling, one he never thought they would face. The moment crashed against them, displacing the ground beneath. Who were they really about to confront, and could their partnership endure this ultimate test? As they approached, the figure turned, a conniving smirk etched upon his face. Was it a friend from the past they might want to trust, or an adversary cloaked in deceit? Each step in his direction echoed with questions that needed answers. Would their newfound alliance buckle under pressure, or could it transform into the very weapon they needed? David steeled himself. The hour of reckoning had arrived, and the stakes surged higher than before. How well could they navigate this labyrinth together? And what truths would emerge once the game began? David's mind raced alongside the palpable tension in the diner. The looming figure became clearer. Steve, the embodiment of complications Jake had tried to leave behind. Each step brought a flurry of emotions, swirling between anxious anticipation and the need for answers that would solidify their alliance or fracture it irreparably. "Stay close," David whispered, a command layered with underlying fear. The resolve he had felt moments before now demanded action more than ever. Their shared purpose throbbed in his chest, but the knife edge of uncertainty kept them on guard. Steve turned fully, and for a moment, a flicker of nostalgia crossed his features, a ghost from the past dipping into their troubled present. "You two made it," he drawled, infusing a casualness that dripped irony in the charged air. "Cut the pleasantries, Steve," Jake interjected, his voice firmer than David had anticipated. "We don't have time for games." His assertiveness surprised David, igniting a spark of hope. Perhaps this confrontation could reshape their narratives. "Always straight to business," Steve chuckled, but the edge in his tone betrayed his discomfort. "Let's talk inside." He gestured, guiding them toward a secluded booth in the corner. The illusion of safety shrouded them, but each step brought the reality of their precarious situation to the forefront. As they settled, the sense of greasy fries and burnt coffee wafted through, contrasting the intensity of the moment. David focused, wanting to dismiss the ambiance and hone in on the task at hand. "Why did you call us?" Jake pursued, eyes locked onto Steve's, a challenge ignited in the air. David admired the resolve blossoming in Jake, pushing past his usual trepidation. "Things have changed," Steve said, leaning in, the smirk fading. "The stakes have escalated. I'm in over my head. And you're both the only ones I can trust." David felt a flicker of disbelief. The implications twisted painfully within him, playing on his growing determination to protect Jake from the darker edges of their reality. Trust was a heavy word weighed down by history, buried under layers of deceit. "Why should we believe you?" David challenged, voice steady. He was aware of the risk in pushing further, but this was a critical juncture. They needed clarity. "Because I'm trying to save my skin and yours," Steve replied, desperation crackling beneath the surface. He had a point, though. If they were truly facing something far more dangerous than they realized, their survival might depend on his willingness to share valuable information. What if they needed Steve's knowledge to navigate the shadows that lay ahead? "Let's say we do listen," Jake countered, crossing his arms defiantly. "What do you have to say?" As Steve laid out the intricacies of the situation, threats beyond what Jake had encountered, a web spun from past indiscretions, entanglements with figures of power and danger, David noticed the shift in Jake's demeanor. The gravity of their choice weighed heavier than before, yet a fierce clarity emerged. It was a moment of revelation. Jake turned toward David, his expression fierce. We can't just walk away from this. We need to confront it. The realization struck David like a lightning bolt. This wasn't merely about facing Steve. It was about harnessing their newfound alliance against forces that threatened to dismantle everything they had worked toward. The fear flickered into resolve, intertwining with the desire to protect each other. "Fine," David said, eyes flickering between the two men, weighing the balance of power. "But if we go down this road, there's no going back for any of us. We need to be all in." Steve nodded, his smirk returning momentarily, but it felt different, more like knowing recognition than triumph. The stakes had changed. The game had shifted from manipulation to a collective survival strategy. As they left the booth, David's determination solidified, the path ahead now charged with purpose. Trusting Jake wasn't just about memories. It became a choice rooted in the awareness of shared vulnerabilities. They would navigate this together, confronting even the shadows of their pasts. Stepping back out into the night, David took a deep breath, the air feeling electric. They were marching into uncertain territory, a battlefield of potential betrayal and newfound strength. But who else lurked beneath the surface, waiting to disrupt their fragile alliance? With each decision they made, the labyrinth they entered tightened around them. What lay ahead was nothing less than a test of will, a brutal confrontation with their deepest fears, and the possibility of discovering what they were truly capable of. Would they emerge stronger, or would the ties between them snap under pressure? The real challenge was just beginning. David's pulse quickened as they stepped into the shadowy embrace of the night. The neon glow from the diner danced ominously behind them, a fading reminder of the safety they had momentarily clung to. With every step, the gravity of their situation pressed heavier on his shoulders, and he couldn't shake the foreboding sense that something sinister awaited them. Jake matched his pace, determination etched on his face, but David could sense the doubt gnawing beneath his partner's resolve. It mirrored his own internal conflict, a swirling mix of fear and the drive to protect not only Jake, but also the very bond they were forging against a backdrop of deceit. "Where do we go from here?" David asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The night air was thick, almost suffocating, as they navigated the darkened streets. Jake hesitated, scanning their surroundings. "We need to find out exactly what we're up against and why Steve thinks we can help him. But it's about more than just him. We need to understand the full picture." David nodded, appreciating the clarity in Jake's voice. It was a reminder of the strength he believed Jake could manifest. They were not just a duo confronting a singular adversary. They were embarking on a journey toward exposing a network that threatened the very essence of their new alliance. "Okay, let's regroup somewhere private, somewhere we can strategize," David proposed, his mind racing. He felt the weight of leadership settle on him, yet it felt natural, almost instinctive. They sought out a nearby park, illuminated only by a few scattered street lamps. The air was cool, and the faint rustle of leaves created a soothing backdrop, a brief respite that contrasted sharply with the tension coursing through them. Sitting on a bench, David's thoughts coalesced around an unsettling reality. "Do you believe Steve?" David finally asked, glancing toward Jake, who was lost in thought. "I don't know," Jake admitted, his voice strained. "I want to, but trusting him means trusting the past, and that's complicated." The unease in Jake's expression mirrored David's own doubts. It was a delicate balance, this interplay of trust and betrayal, past and present. What if moving forward with Steve resulted in leaving themselves vulnerable yet again? "I think he's scared," David suggested, the words tasting tentative on his tongue. "It feels different this time. His desperation seems real, but we need to tread carefully." Jake nodded slowly, his brow furrowed. The wheels in his mind were turning, and David could see the metaphorical gears shifting, each thought a potential strategy brewing in Jake's newfound confidence. Let's leverage his fear against him. If he thinks he's out of options, he'll share everything he knows. This was the essence of their alliance, of their collective growth, the synthesis of David's instinctive caution and Jake's courageous audacity. They were no longer hesitant shadows of their former selves. They were emerging as strategists, capable of influencing the tides of their circumstances. How do we communicate with him without revealing too much? David pondered, shifting his gaze to the ground. He felt the weight of responsibility as they entered these murky waters, knowing trust could easily turn to betrayal under the right pressures. Set up a meeting. Let him think he's in control, that we're willing to follow his lead, Jake suggested, his eyes glinting with excitement. We can plant questions, get him talking, revealing layers he might not be ready to share. David's heart raced with possibility. This strategy required finesse, a delicate dance between manipulation and collaboration, and he felt confident in their ability to steer this precarious situation. As they crafted their plan, an unsettling thought crossed David's mind. The path they were about to embark on could irrevocably alter their lives and test limits he never knew existed within him to make the ultimate choice. But as he looked at Jake, he felt an overwhelming surge of solidarity. This was the moment to stake their claim in a reality that seemed set against them. Facing the unknown was inherently uncomfortable, yet it shimmered with potential. What lay ahead was a confrontation with illusions not just of loyalty, but of self-worth. Stepping willingly into the chaos, David grappled with the notion. What else would uncover along the way? Would revealing the deepest shadows deepen their trust, or fracture it beyond repair? The awareness loomed, but just as David began to settle into the thought, an unexpected flash of movement caught his eye. Someone was watching them from across the park. David's instincts surged. Were they already being tracked? As the figure melted into the darkness, the heart of their dilemma crystallized. They could be faces in a war they had only just begun to understand. The next move was crucial, the stakes higher than ever. Would this be the first test of their resolve, or merely the calm before an impending storm? The adrenaline coursed through David's veins as he leaned forward, trying to catch another glimpse of the shadowy figure. The lingering question reverberated in his mind. Who were they? What part of this dark puzzle were they entwined in? The weight of uncertainty clawed at his confidence, but beneath that doubt flickered a stubborn spark of resolve. "Did you see that?" he asked Jake, his voice barely above a whisper, still tinged with the lingering tension of their conversation. Jake turned his head, searching the dark edges of the park, muscles coiled in anticipation. "Yeah, we need to move," Jake replied, his tone urgent, laced with an awareness that this was not a simple encounter. David felt both fear and exhilaration at the prospect of being active participants in a game far more dangerous than they had imagined. They rose from the bench, the chill of the night air punctuating the gravity of their situation. This shadowy existence started to engulf them, making David acutely aware that they were no longer mere observers in the unfolding drama. Now they were part of it. "Let's head toward the back exit of the park," David suggested, his instincts sharpening. He took the lead, feeling more like a leader than ever before. The thrill of agency surged within him as he navigated through the clustered trees, where the light connected to their earlier conversation began to dim. Jake followed closely, but David could tell he was a step behind, wrestling with his own fears. David pushed the thought aside. He needed to stay focused. Together they could conjure plans that pushed their boundaries, coax courage out of their hesitance. Out of the park and onto a side street, they halted, leaning against the cool brick of a nearby building. David's mind raced as he tried to piece together their next steps. Before confronting Steve, they needed to understand what was happening beyond the veneer of his story. "What do you think the figure was?" Jake asked, breaking the silence. His voice cracked ever so slightly, revealing the tension underneath. It reminded David that their emotional fortitude was as critical as their strategic planning. Someone who knows about Steve. Or maybe they're working for him. The notion unsettled David, forcing him to confront the creeping paranoia that had begun to seep into their reality. "If we're already being watched, we need to work fast." The urgency catalyzed a surge of adrenaline within David. They had stepped into a game of shadows, and understanding his opponent became paramount. Before we meet Steve, let's backtrack our steps from the diner. See if we can find that figure again, or at least sense if they're still tracking us. They retraced their route, David's heart hammering as he sought any sign that clarified their vulnerability. The process felt like peeling away layers of an onion. Each false lead clung to the familiar sense of betrayal and deceit. He began to analyze his feelings more critically, instead of letting them spiral beyond his control. Each thought coalesced into a newfound understanding of the stakes involved. "Do you think we can handle meeting him earlier than planned?" Jake asked, pulling David back from the brink of introspection. There was something in Jake's tone that suggested he was grappling with confidence too, a brilliant clue that their partnership was evolving. "Definitely," David replied, surprising himself with the steadiness of his resolve. "We go in fully prepared. We need to ask the right questions, items of inquiry that pull apart the threads of his narrative before he speaks them." Their walk resumed, determination fueling their steps. David recognized this change in himself, a crisp clarity that had been forged from uncertainty and strife. For months, he'd struggled to find his place, but instead of retreating into doubt, he was embracing this challenge. The emergence of his inner strategist felt liberating, yet terrifying. As they rounded a corner, David caught sight of a flickering street lamp, casting an eerie glow. The streets felt desolate, mirroring their internal turmoil. He didn't expect clarity in the chaos, but a rising ambition flickered within him, a desire to push through the fear that had often held him back. "Jake," David said, halting, urgency flooding his voice. "We need to prepare ourselves for the worst." Jake nodded, and in that moment, David realized that beyond questioning Steve, they were questioning their own readiness to face whatever revelations awaited them. There was a distance to traverse before they could confront Steve, yet David knew one thing for certain. Both their truths were intertwined in ways they had yet to understand, and soon they would face whatever truths lingered in the shadows. Just then, as they reached a familiar intersection, a sharp sound sliced through the air. The rustling of leaves was accompanied by footsteps, heavy and deliberate. David and Jake turned, bracing themselves. "Are we about to face them?" David muttered, gripping Jake's arm. The ambiguity of the moment crackled with unarticulated tension. They had gone too far to turn back now. The time had come to confront not only their adversaries, but also the haunting shadows of their own fears. David steadied himself, his pulse quickening as the footsteps drew closer. He exchanged a glance with Jake, whose face reflected a blend of fear and determination. In that moment, they were no longer just a father and son, but two resolute allies standing before the precipice of their past decisions and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. "Whatever happens, we stick to the plan," David whispered, tightening his grip on the unyielding edge of the brick wall beside them. It was an odd comfort he sought, this sturdy facade, as if it could absorb the weight of their impending confrontation. From the shadows emerged a figure, but not just any figure. It was Steve, walking briskly, his earlier calm replaced by palpable anxiety. "You weren't supposed to be here yet," he exclaimed, glancing over his shoulder as if fearful of being followed. David and Jake exchanged wary looks, but the sight of Steve unleashed a surge of confidence in them. This was their chance to confront the tangled web of lies, not just from the periphery where shadows dwelled. They had a new understanding, a way to reshape the narrative once clouded in confusion. "Why shouldn't we be here?" David demanded, stepping forward. The edges of his voice carved through the awkward tension, alighting a spark of assertiveness. Steve blinked, momentarily taken aback by their shift in approach. "Because you need to understand the gravity of this situation. Things are escalating faster than I anticipated." "Exactly how fast, Steve?" Jake interjected, allowing his frustration to rise, now channeling the unyielding resolve David had cultivated within him. We need to understand all the players involved. The stakes are too high for us to accept half-truths. Fine, Steve said, his demeanor shifting. The corners of his mouth twitched into a semblance of respect. The people in play are not just interested in money. They want control, influence. You stepped onto a board game where the pieces are more than pawns. They are players with lethal agendas. David felt a surge of indignation. This has nothing to do with us wanting to play your games, Steve. You led us into this spiral. We deserve to know how far this reaches, and how we can get out. It was a bold statement, a stark departure from the earlier vulnerability that gripped him. Clarity flooded through David. They were no longer passive observers. They were architects of their futures, ready to reclaim what had been threatened. Acknowledge that you're not merely innocent bystanders, Steve huffed. If you're going to survive, you need to act. The longer you wait, the deeper you sink. So what's next? Jake pressed, his jaw clenched. The intensity in his eyes flared like fire, igniting the resolve within David even further. If they were going to dismantle this chaos, they needed more than just knowledge. They needed courage and solidified unity. Meet me tomorrow at dawn, Steve replied hastily, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I'll bring more information, but you need to assure me you can follow through. This isn't just about the money anymore. It's about loyalty, and it gets dangerous. We'll be there, David affirmed, his tone solid as a rock. But understand, we are in control of our decisions now. As the tension ebbed, David sensed a shift, an unspeakable bond forming amidst the storm. Their past plagued with shadows was evolving into a future that heralded clarity and expression of fortitude. Once Steve melted back into the shadows, Jake's expression morphed. Fear subsided, replaced by a burgeoning sense of ownership over their circumstances. That was intense, he admitted, and in those words, David saw a flicker of transformation. They had both crossed the threshold from bewilderment to awareness. Exactly, David replied, a smile beginning to shape his lips. But it's also an opportunity. We are no longer bound by the fear of betrayal. We're rewriting our story. The dialogue hadn't just made them aware of the danger. It had seasoned their determination into something sharper, something precise. Could they conquer this maze together? Did they truly own the shadows that threatened to engulf them? As dawn broke the horizon, David felt a revitalized connection to Jake, the raw energy of their renewed partnership charging the air around them. They began to see beyond the maze of threats, grasping not just the tangible realities before them, but also their newfound emotional fortitude. The sun illuminated their resolve, and as they faced the approaching day, David understood. They were not merely confronting a dangerous past. They were actively reclaiming their truth. Jake turned to David, a sense of determination solidifying between them. Tomorrow, we'll face them. Together. Together, David affirmed, gripping Jake's shoulder firmly, a gesture that resonated with their shared journey, a testament to the growth forged in the fires of adversity. With each step forward, they ventured into clarity, a dawn illuminating the strength they achieved against their fears, transforming betrayal into unbreakable resilience. Now they were ready, armed not just with knowledge, but with each other. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It really makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.